Can't hear you.
Thank you. I don't know why that happened, but it did. So, all right, we'll start over on that. People in the recording, I was on mute. Okay, I was like, why are all these people talking? All right, great. We will start in child's pose. So if you're on the recording, you need a blanket and a block. Child's pose with your hips reaching towards your heels, head reaching toward the ground. Although those two things don't ever have to reach, right? They don't ever have to touch. You could have a blanket under your knees, which is what I was saying, or you could have a blanket behind your knees if you needed a little bit of space. So if sitting your hips back towards your heels creates pain in the knees, I would suggest putting something here in the knee pit so that you can create a little space in the actual knee joint. And you can always have your knees closer together, which creates a little bit more rounding in the low back, but might put more pressure in the knees or in the hips. Or you can have your knees slightly apart. They can even be really wide apart, which could let your chest release a little bit more toward the ground. Maybe even your head finds the ground more. And that can give you more release in the upper back and shoulders, a little less rounding in the low back. You can choose which version of a child's pose you'd like. The arms are extended right now. If for some reason that really doesn't feel good to you, they can always come back beside you. We're not necessarily pushing into the ground though right now. You can even have your elbows bent so that they're kind of resting onto the floor. And if it bothers you that your head isn't finding the ground, if it's not, just put a blocker, blanket, or some sort of prop under the head to make the ground come to the forehead. Taking a few deep breaths here. So in this shape, you'll probably inhale and feel your belly press into your thighs. And then exhale, you can really feel that belly move away from the thighs. Doesn't mean it won't stop touching them, it's just moving away. And so you can really bring your attention to your breath, to the inhales and exhales, maybe noticing the spaces that move, even noticing the places that might feel a little stuck because of the shape. That's okay. You're just sort of noticing the breath, helping you become centered. In this child's pose place, we're kind of cutting off our senses. The arms are cutting off the ears a little bit. The eyes are down. They may be closed, they may not be. So that we can kind of cut off the external world for a moment and bring our attention inward. Maybe bring our attention to the sound of our breath. Or the sensations of the breath. Or even the sensations of the internal body. If you had some intentions for the practice, you could set them now. Just reminding yourself of why you're here and what you want to get out of class. You're also welcome to set a sankalpa. A sankalpa is something a little bit beyond sort of an intention for just this time and space. It's really more about an intention of how you want to use your yoga off the mat. What do you want to cultivate in your yoga practice to take with you throughout the day? How do you want to keep practicing? either becoming more compassionate or more patient or performing acts of service or becoming more mindful. These are all types of sankalpa you can set. You don't have to choose any of those. It's really up to you. But what really brought you to try yoga? What brought you to the class? And this is just our asana portion of our practice, right? So just the physical portion of our practice. There's 7 other limbs of yoga that have to do with the way we treat the world, have to do with the way we treat ourselves, breath work, meditation work, having to do with how we interact with nature, how we interact with whatever our definition of the divine is. So you can really think about how you want to use what you're learning here on the mat in those other limbs. Or you can just say, I'm just here to move, and that's what I want to do today. From here, we'll start to bring our hands in a little bit so we can find some movement. And then we'll start to walk our hands over to the right. So we're still staying in that child's pose, but we're sort of leaning off to the right. So you could push your hands down, start to fold inward a little bit more. So if you walked your hands in, you might want to walk them out some. And then you can push that right hand down to really try to find that right hip sinking more towards the left. I mean, the left hip sinking more towards the left foot. If you wanted more stretch in the left side, you could stack the left hand over the right, finding that stretch on the outside edge of the left side of the body. Maybe through the shoulders, the arms, the rib cage, even the hips. For me, my head doesn't find the ground. I'm okay with that because I know I'm not going to be here very long. If it really bothers you, you can rest your head against your arms or put a prop under the head. And then we'll start to walk ourselves back to center. And then walk yourself over to the left. So again, you might need to come up a little bit in order to sort of get your body over your left thigh. It doesn't have to be perfectly on top of it. It's just going in that direction. And then pushing your right hip back toward your right heel. You might be staying there, or you may want to stack your right hand on top of your left, getting more of a stretch through that right side of the body. And from here, you can walk yourself back to center. And then we'll make our way to hands and knees. So just making your way to hands and knees. If you need some extra padding under the knees, just put a blanket there. Knees are somewhat under the shoulders. Hands are knees are not under the shoulders. Knees are somewhat under the hips. Hands are under the shoulders. So they're just not very far forward, right? And if you need a little bit of space in the wrist, you could walk those hands a little bit in front of the shoulders. That might take some pinching out of the wrist if you're feeling that. And then push the hands down into the ground and pull the crown of the head forward. You can push the tops of the shins down towards the ground, or if your toes are staying tucked, you could push those tucked toes down into the ground a little bit to try to get a neutral spine in this low back area. So that means we're not just sort of resting into our low back, this part that sort of hinges easier. We push those legs down, push those hands down, and our whole mid body gets engaged a little bit more. From here, we're going to move through 5 rounds of cat-cow. So inhaling takes you forward, arching the back, trying to create space between the crown of the head and the tailbone. And exhaling takes you into cat, rounding the spine, pushing that space behind the shoulder blades up towards the ceiling. 4 more of those on your own breath count or just as you move naturally. If cat-cow is becoming a really familiar and comfortable place for you, then I would encourage you to take this even slower. Maybe thinking even moving from vertebra by vertebra, from like the tailbone to the head, and the head back to the tailbone. So really creating a wave through the spine, only if it's feeling comfortable, because slowing this shape down makes it a little bit more challenging, which can make it more engaging. Sometimes I think we just kind of roll through cat-cow if we have become real comfortable with it. So we need to change it a little bit so that we can stay engaged. Really noticing how the spine moves. So after your 5th round of cat-cow, whatever that happens to be, so if you're still doing it, keep going. We'll keep our hands under our shoulders somewhat, and we're going to do these rolls with our shoulders that we've been doing. So we know that pushing the hands into the ground is protracting the shoulders. It's making them go wide across the back. Pulling those shoulders up next to the ears is elevation. So they're protracted. You're still pushing away from the ground, but you're trying to shrug your shoulders up next to your ears. And then retraction is taking those shoulders back together. So they're up next to the ears, but now they're back together. And then descending is sending them down the back. So we protract, push away, elevate, scrunch up next to the ears, retract, pull the shoulders together, descend, send them down the back. Protract, trying to keep our spine somewhat neutral. So we're not really rolling through cat-cows at the same time. Pulling the ears back, the shoulders up next to the ears, and then the shoulders back, and then down. Keep doing that same circle in that direction 2 more times, trying not to move the head or the neck either. You might even want to tuck the chin slightly because that helps the neck sort of stay stable. The next time the shoulders are down the back and protracted, so you're pushing the hands down into the ground, the shoulders are away from the ears, we'll reverse. From that position, we're going to start to pull the shoulders back together. So the shoulders are away from the ears, but now they're pulling back together. Up next to the ears, elevate, push away from the ground, protract. Descend down the back, retract the shoulders together, elevate, protract, descend. So just the opposite direction, shoulder circles. Do 2 more. And then you can release. If you need to come off your hands for a moment and sit up, you can shake out those hands. We're coming off them for a second anyway, in a moment. But from here, you can make your way back down to hands and knees. We're gonna make our way into a downward facing dog. So hands come forward from the shoulders now. You might wanna have your pointer fingers be parallel, because sometimes that helps our shoulders feel like they're in a better, more external rotation, which might feel good to us. We could tuck the toes and start to send the hips up and back, finding a downward facing dog. See, my feet are slipping. Make sure your rug is really stable under you. Let me turn this way for these. Pushing your feet into the ground, your hands to the ground. You can bend your knees deeply. You can have your heels way off the ground. And you're trying to push your hips up toward the corner of the ceiling and the wall. And just remember, you always have puppy pose as a choice instead, with your knees down, but the hips are still going up and back. From here, we're going to walk our hands back to our feet. So we're coming into a forward fold toward the back of your practice space. You can keep your knees deeply bent, especially if you have low back stuff, so that your belly can find your thighs. The feet can be really wide apart, which might give your belly some space to rest between the legs. And then you're just going to dangle here. If having those knees deeply bent actually brings pinching to the front of the hips, you could bring those legs a little bit closer to the straight and pull your belly in a little bit toward your spine. So like pulling your belly button in a little, which might give you a little bit more space in that area. But just make sure you're not feeling any pain in the low back when you do that. You can shake your head yes, you can shake your head no. You could grab opposite elbows and sway a little side to side if you wanted. And then from here, bend the knees and inhale, roll up to standing. Shake it out a little. We're going to use a little bit of balance to get to the front of the mat. I'm going to do it back this way again. So from here, you're going to start to bring some weight into your left foot. And then pull your right knee in towards the chest. You might be able to hook your hands around the outside or around the thigh. And we'll just try to catch some air. So you may not be standing like I am right now. You're just trying to find some balance before you set that right foot forward. Bringing weight into the right knee, right foot, lifting the left knee up. Standing up nice and tall if possible, step the left foot forward. It helps to find something that's not moving and stare at it. Standing up nice and tall, pulling that right knee in, step it forward, left knee. Step it down. Now you're at the top of your practice space, finding a Samastitihi, equal standing pose. So for me, that means my feet are parallel and right under my hips. Some people do prefer their feet to be closer together. Some people might prefer their feet to be farther apart. What I want you to be able to find is even weight from the toes to the heels. So you might rock back and forth for a moment so you kind of find that. And even weight from the big toe mound to the pinky toe mound. So you don't want all your weight to be on the inside of your foot or the outside of your foot. Can it be fairly even? And then once you find that, so that might mean your knees to be farther away, closer together. You find what feels good to you. We'll push the feet down, and pushing the feet down engages the legs. You should feel the thighs become a little bit stronger. And then lift the chest up, letting the arms be heavy. Lift the head up like you could touch your head to your ceiling. And then just take your attention to sort of this low back area and your front rib cage area. You can even use your hands. And you just want to make sure your front rib cage isn't sticking out. So it's sort of relaxed down. And the same thing with the tailbone. It's not sticking out like a duck. You want it to be relaxed a little bit. And then just let the arms be heavy. So Samastitihi, equal standing in the foot, but also equal effort in the body. From here, if you'd like to close your eyes, you can. Sometimes this helps us connect with our breath more, or you can keep your eyes open. We've been practicing that Ujjayi breath. I was using that when it was cold. Now it's like 60 degrees outside. So if you're hot, you don't need to use this. If you're already warm, don't use this breath. If you want to create more warmth in your body, you can find that slight constriction in the back of your throat, like you're fogging up a mirror or creating the sound of waves. And you can take a few breaths there. We'll all just take a few breaths. If you want to do the Ujjayi breath with that slight constriction, you can choose that. It can help you notice your breath more. And it does also help create strength in your internal organs. So like in all of the muscles and connective tissues within the body, deep within the body, it actually helps engage those if that's something you're looking for. Like if you're feeling really unbalanced, sometimes finding Ujjayi breath can help you find some balance within the body. And do this in the correct order this week. So we'll be pushing our feet down, lifting our chest up. If your eyes are closed, you can keep them closed or you can choose to open them. We'll begin to inhale the arms up. Palms can face each other, reaching through the fingertips, getting long in the sideways. And then exhale, begin to fold forward. You can put that bend in the knees if you'd like. Inhale, halfway lift, pulling your chest forward, pulling the crown of the head forward, trying to get length in the spine. And exhale, fold in. Coming to stand, inhaling arms up, flat back and arms can bring you up, or if you would like to roll, that's fine. Exhale brings you back to Samastitihi. Inhaling arms up, Urdhva Hastasana. You could look up if that felt okay on your neck. Exhaling Uttanasana, forward fold. Inhaling Ardha Uttanasana. Ardha means half. So anytime we're half lifting or half twisting, you might hear the word Ardha. Exhaling back to Uttanasana. Inhaling back to Urdhva Hastasana. Upward facing hands. Exhaling, pressing the arms together or pressing the arms down. You could add on, if your shoulders are feeling good, take your arms out to T. Bring those pinkies together and then thumbs and press your palms together as you send your fingers forward. Inhale, lift the arms up. You can look up towards the thumb. The head stays behind the arms, pushing the hands together. This is a more traditional version of Urdhva Hastasana, and it really opens the backs of your shoulders. If that doesn't feel good, or you feel like you can't get here without sticking your rib cage out and your tailbone out, separate the arms. Exhaling, folding forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, make your way to standing. You can bring your arms back together if you'd like. And then exhale, press them down. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling, arms up, either bringing the palms together or not. Exhale, folding forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhaling, fold. Inhaling, rise. Exhaling, pressing the arms down. One more. Inhaling, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, fold, Uttanasana. Inhaling, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling back into Uttanasana. Inhaling, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhaling, Samasthiti. Great job. From here, grab a block or whatever your prop, block-like prop. And we're gonna put it in our right hand. And I'm gonna scoot myself off my rug a little bit so that I don't kill myself. Okay. So from here, block in the right hand. You're taking a big step back with the left foot. And the right toes will stay pointed forward. The left toes are gonna be at about a 45-degree angle. Take a big enough step back, and you might need to adjust that your arms are almost about the same width as your ankles. If this really hurts your foot immediately or your ankle, you can make it a little smaller. Just know that you might need to put a pretty big bend into this front knee to get closer to the ground, okay? If your feet can be wider without any pain, make them slightly wider, or at least the width of your wrist if you take your arm out to a T. Left toes are kind of at a 45-degree angle. You might want to bend that back knee and just make sure it feels safe. It doesn't feel like there's any pain or sensation there. You can adjust your toes as needed. And then we'll bring our arms out to a T. You're facing the left. The block or block-like thing is in your right hand on its highest setting. I had a teacher call this a sassy hip the other day. So you're gonna take your left hip back, pulling your right hip back. It's a little sassy hip. It's like if you were like being sassy, you'd stand there and your hip would go off to the side. And at the same time, you're taking your right hand forward as far as it can go, parallel-ish to the ground. When you're like, okay, I can't go any farther forward, left hand comes to the hip, right hand comes down on the outside of the calf, not farther forward. If it needs to be farther back, that's okay, but just not farther forward. You want your right hand to be under your right shoulder. Push your feet down first. See what happened? I was like not paying attention. I pushed my feet down. My hips line up a little bit more. My legs are stronger. You may need to have a really big bend in that front knee already. That's okay. If you can, you're pushing that right big toe mound down and trying to pull that right hip back. From here, push your right hand down, which helps you turn more to the left, opening your chest more to the left. Think about pulling the crown of your head forward. If your left hand's gonna stay on your left hip, push that left hand down. If you're ready to take that left arm up, you can try that out, lifting through the left fingertips. Trying to line the left hand up with the right hand, not because it looks a certain way, but because that alignment helps you get stronger, and it helps you do that with just the stacking of the bones. Same thing if the hand's on the hip, we're really just pushing down to help us try to get some stacking and some length in the spine. Exhale, look down, if you weren't already. We'll take this block. We're either gonna flip it once so it's on the medium setting, or if you just have another prop, you're moving it to the outside of your foot. You may also need to keep the block on the higher setting. It's just moving up towards the foot. From there, you'll bend into the right knee and push the right arm into the right leg and the right leg back into the right knee. So you wanna make sure your right knee is pushing out to the right. That keeps the knee safe. Push that back heel down. You could keep your left hand on your hip, or you could take that left arm down. It circle sweeps up next to the left ear. When it reaches the left ear, you'll turn your head and your chest to the left and start to look up to the left through the armpit. My pinky side of my hand faces down to the ground and my palm points behind me. That's a good rotation for most shoulders. And then we're trying to reach our left hand away from our left foot while pushing our right knee to the right. So again, your hand could be here on your hip. You're trying to turn your chest to the left. Pushing that left hand down helps facilitate that. We'll leave the block where it is. We're looking down. We're squeezing our legs towards each other. We're still bending into that right knee and pushing it to the right. We'll start to inhale our chest up. If your left arm is up, you'll just bring it back behind you. We're finding warrior two. From here, the fingers reach away from each other. We're broadening through the collarbone. We're bending into that right knee. It does not need to be parallel to the ground, but the thing I want you to do is just make sure that it's not sneaking towards the middle of the mat. Push it away. Push it to the right. And then you can push that back heel down more. You might even need to lean back a little bit. Most of us do. A lot of us want to put all the weight in this front leg, but this back leg can do a lot of the work. And then from here, we're just going to come through a plank today. So we're going to change it up since it's the last week. We're going to windmill our arms down. We're coming to the toes of that back foot. You can bring your hands down to the ground. If this is a little bit too far for you, you can walk yourself in some. Or if you need to drop that back knee, that's okay too. Bring your hands to the ground, figure out a way to do that. So you may need to drop that back knee and then step your right foot to your left. You can adjust yourself. We're finding a plank, hands under the shoulders, knees are not under the hips, they're behind the hips. Toes can be on the ground, knees can be on the ground, but we're looking for this sloped line from the shoulders to the hips. We don't want the hips to drop down towards the ground. They're also not back, they're kind of in between. Pulling your lower ribs and hips towards each other can help with that. If you wanted, you could lift your knees. For 3, 2, and 1, we'll exhale and find downward facing dog. Sending the hips back. Again, your heels can be way off the ground. Your knees don't have to be anywhere close to straight. This time we're going to exhale and walk our feet forward towards our hands. Finding that forward fold at the front of our practice space. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. And then inhale, make your way up to standing. Exhaling, pressing the arms down. So a lot of people will call what we just did a vinyasa. It just means placing the body really specifically, usually with breath. So on the second side, since you kind of know the shapes that are coming, if you want to think more about how your breath might pair with some of that movement, always think that inhales help bring you up, lengthen you, expand. Exhales help you sink, go down, ground, contract. Grab your block with your left hand. And you'll take a big step back with that right foot. Right toes point at somewhat of a 45-degree angle, left toes point forward. From here, you can inhale the arms to T. And then sassy hips, that right hip goes back, the left hip goes back, and then the left arm's gonna come way, way out. This helps create length in your spine. And then you just drop that hand down. So it's on the outside of your calf. Right hand to the hip to start. Push that right hand down if it's there. Push your feet into the ground. Don't let them just be lazy. Even if the knee's bent, they can still push down. Not that you're being lazy, that's not the right word, but the legs should be able to help you some. Pull your chest forward. And then you could inhale your right arm up. If that felt okay, you could reach your right fingertips up toward the ceiling. You can kind of see the difference. Here I am with my right arms just kind of weighing me down. Here I am if I'm lifting up. It opens my chest a little bit more and I feel stronger. You could look up towards your hand if you wanted, or you can just look forward or even to the ground and just try to connect with your breath more. That's the thing. It's why I do the same sequence every week for a little while. Your body will start to learn the shape and it will start to learn how it feels good in that shape. And then you can focus on how you breathe in that shape. You can bring your attention more inward once you know the shapes. On an exhale, you'll bring that right hand down, look down, and then flip the block or move it next to your foot. Bending into your left knee, press that left knee to the left, press the left arm into the left knee. It may not touch perfectly, but you're just pressing them towards each other. Press the right heel down. You can stay here trying to turn to the right, or the right arm comes down, circle sweeps next to the right ear, and then you're looking up through the armpit. So you're not behind the arm because that might not feel great on your neck. It's really through the armpit. And you're pushing the left knee to the left, looking up. If having your hand this low did not feel good, you can always have your elbow on your knee or even have a hand on like a couch or chair and be higher up. Reaching through the fingertips though, away from the right heel. Look down to the ground. That helps your neck be able to move a little bit easier. And then inhale, make your way into warrior two. So arms are at a T. We're lifting our shoulders over our hips, pushing the feet down, pushing the left knee to the left. Reach through the fingertips, reach the crown of the head up towards the ceiling. If you want to look down, you can make sure that you see your toes on the inside of that left knee. So the knee's not going into the center of the mat. All right, we're windmilling down. So we're gonna start to turn forward. This back heel will come up right there. You can drop your knee if you need to, or you can keep it lifted the whole time. Bringing your hands down, step that left foot back to the right. Knees can be down or up. We're pulling our chest forward while at the same time pulling our lower ribs and hips towards each other, pushing our feet down, really pushing the hands down, and holding for another 3, 2, and 1. Send the hips back. You can find downward facing dog. Or if you're ready for a break, drop the knees, finding puppy pose or child's pose. Or sometimes I just need to sit up so I can find my breath. We're all going to bring our knees down and our feet forward. We're finding Dandasana, seated staff. So the legs are out in front. I'm not worried if they're perfectly together or not. I want them to feel comfortable. And that might mean that they need to be a little wider. That's okay. You may need to sit up on something if you feel like you can't sit up with your legs out in front of you. It's usually me. If you feel like you can't straighten your legs, you might want to take the blanket and put it under your knees or even a pillow under your knees so that you can have something to press into, but the knees don't have to be perfectly straight. They're like being held a little bit bent. From here, just see if you can get your big toe and your pinky in line. So for me, a lot of times my feet are kind of externally rotated naturally. My big toe wants to come toward me, so I have to push it back, push it out. Other people are the opposite. So you're just trying to get your toes to point up and your legs to be in line, your feet to be in line with each other. Hands come beside you, somewhere near your hips. That might be slightly in front of, behind. If you're up on something and you have short arms, you might need to put a block or something under the hands or a blanket or come to fingertips. And we'll lift our chest up. Roll the shoulders out of the way and then sit up nice and tall. If you wanted to do this against a wall, you could, trying to push your back into the wall and lift up. We'll just take a few more breaths here if you wanted more. So if you're like, I don't really understand what this pose does and I want more sensation, you could take your chin, bring it towards the chest, and then watch your chest rise on an inhale. And just keep and let your belly only relax on the exhale. So the chest would stay where it is. Inhale, chest rises. Exhale, just the belly relaxes. So that every time you inhale, you're getting a little taller. And every time you exhale, you're keeping that length. Everybody exhale and release. Whew, shake it out a little bit. We're doing our leg lifts. So if you've been doing this with a block nearby, you might want to have one. If you haven't been doing it with a block nearby, you don't have to. The block's just there as like a little bit of feedback. You know, you can kind of gauge the height of your leg that way. Hands are beside you to help you sit up. We're trying not to lean back as much as possible. So that's why another thing you could do is sit in front of a wall. That kind of gives you feedback there. Toes point straight up to start. The left leg is just there to kind of help you stay in place. We're worried about the right leg right now. We'll start by pushing the hands down, lifting the chest up, and we're lifting that right leg up as high as it can go, and then setting it down. That might mean that that leg doesn't come up, and that's okay, as long as you're really feeling those legs engage and trying. Lift up and down. We're doing 3. If you want to do more than 3, you can. Up and down. We'll turn the leg out to the right, so we're externally rotating. And then we'll do that same thing. So the whole leg turns out, the thigh, the knee, the shin, they're all pointing to the right. They may not be out as much as mine. I have a lot of external rotation. Your foot might just be out a little bit. That's okay. We're lifting up and setting down. See if you can set down the leg as softly as possible, so it's not clunking down and up. So we'll do 3 of those. Legs turned out to the side. We're going to pick it up and take it to the outside of the block. If you don't have a block there, you're just taking it out to the right some. Lifting it up and over. Back up and over. 3 times total, or maybe like up to 5 if you wanted more. Okay. We have been doing this for a few weeks, so you may be feeling pretty comfortable now. Or it may feel like not comfortable at all, and that's fine. It doesn't mean things have to change, right? We're just giving ourselves the option to notice it. Sitting up tall, we'll do the same thing on the left side. Left leg lifts and sets down. First one, toes point straight up. 2, 3. Next one, toes turn out. Just lifting straight up. 1. Again, you can add more if you need them. 3. And then from here, leg goes up, out, up, and back. Especially on these outs, see if you can lower your leg really slowly and softly rather than doing that. If you have to do that, you can do that. Or you could just not lift up the leg and only do so much that you can do. All right, coming back to center, shake it out. We're all going to bend our knees. Find this deep, deep bend in the knees that your feet can find the floor. Sit up nice and tall and inhale your arms up. Exhale, start to fold forward, grabbing your hands under your thighs. So that might be your wrist, you're grabbing opposite wrist, or forearms, or fingertips, or you're just grabbing onto the thighs. And pull your chest forward. So you're really trying to hook your rib cage over your knees. It's not going to happen, but that's what you're going for. You're really trying to get there. And then on an exhale, you're keeping your chest like it is. Maybe you start to bring your legs forward. You're not going to go any farther than what your hands can hold on to. So if they start to slip, stop. That's your first part of your edge, the first sort of place we're finding to stay. And then just let your head relax. So doing a forward fold, but we're taking the idea of grabbing the feet or getting the hands anywhere near the feet totally out of this, because this helps us realize that the shape we're trying to make, that forward fold, happens a lot more in our back than our legs. We don't want that stretch to happen necessarily just in the back of our knees or hamstrings. You could still be feeling something there. But this is sort of teaching you about how your back and legs react to each other. For me, my spine is really tight. And it makes me feel like my legs are really tight, but it's usually my spine. Inhale, look forward towards your toes. Exhale, unwind. You can bring your hands behind you. You can set the feet down, and we'll just do a little windshield wiper here. Just sort of letting the knees fall side to side. Letting that back, that low back sort of move back into place. Legs come back out in front of you. And we'll come into our figure 4. So the right knee is going to bend in. And then you're placing that right ankle on top of that space between the knee and quad. The left knee and quad. Some people will not like their ankle bone touching that. So you might need to take it off a little bit, like off to the left some. I kind of like my ankle bone touching it. It's like a little bit of a massage in that area we were just exercising when we were doing the lifts. Your hands can come behind you, and this time you can lean back if you need to. You might be staying here, or you might be bending that left leg just so that the foot comes to the floor. If you're like, I'm still not feeling very much sensation in this right outer hip, then you can start to walk that foot closer. You could push yourself towards the shin more by pushing away from the ground. That also generally helps our neck not get stiff here in the upper back. So if you have upper back stuff, your neck sometimes gets stiff, you get migraines, you might want to push away from the ground. Or if you're like, I don't really want to push away today, you could just let your arms be like a hammock. Your shoulders could even go up next to your ears. You're just sort of resting into them. Just know that if you get a stiff neck or something, this may not be the right choice. This also takes you away a little bit from the hip sensation. So if you wanted more hip sensation, it's all about pushing yourself closer to the leg. You can always move a little side to side. Just sort of rolling on those hips. Giving yourself a little massage. Come back to center if you're doing that. We're going to walk that left foot forward if you brought it in, just a tiny bit. And then we'll start to walk it over to the right as we bring this right sole of the foot down and the left side of the thigh down. We could stay right here. Maybe this is already a ton of sensation for us, so we could totally stay here. Or we could bring both hands to the right knee, trying to sit up tall. And so we're already twisting there. That's a twist. You may stay here. You might be able to bring your right hand behind you. And that's like a kickstand to help you lift up. Left hand stays on the right knee, and you use that to help you turn to the right. You might have to pull your belly in a little bit, get the belly sort of away from the thigh to find some more movement. It helps if you inhale and sit up, and exhale, allow that exhale to help you contract your stomach so that maybe you can find a little bit more twist. It's not going to happen in my body today, but if you needed more, you could take your left arm up and then to the outside of the right knee and use that elbow pushing into the knee to help get more twist. My mid back is very tight today. You could take your head to the right and even your eyeballs to the right. And we'll just take 2 more breaths here, an inhale and an exhale. Another inhale, and then on your exhale, taking your head forward first, then your chest. We'll even take our belly button and just turn to the left gently. So not a huge turn to the left, just sort of an unwinding. And then we'll come back to center. Stick that left leg out, step the right foot forward. If you need to give yourself little shakes here of the legs side to side, that's fine. Bringing that left ankle on top of the right knee. By the way, you could still be sitting on something. If you don't want to be sitting on it anymore, you don't have to be. From here, sitting up tall, noticing how that knee feels. If you need to lean back, you can. You could bend your right knee and you could stay here. Remember that sides are different, especially in the hips. So you may not go as deeply into the side as you did on the other side, or you might go deeper. You could bring that that right foot closer, or you could push yourself toward the shins with your hands, or you could let your shoulders relax. It's really up to you and how you're feeling in your body. You might sway. If you are a little nervous about your neck getting tight, because often what happens is your neck is like, ooh, we're trying to take away tension from the hips, I'll just take that tension. You could let your head kind of move around in a little circle, little half circles. Just to keep some movement in the neck, which could keep it from taking some tension. And then from here, we'll start to take that left foot over to the ground. If you need to walk your right foot forward, you could. If you need to walk it in closer to your hip, you could. The left foot finds the ground, and then we'll try to sit up. So again, this might be where you are, or both hands could come to the knee. I don't really care if the sole of the foot's perfectly on the ground. It's just going in that direction. The more it can be on the ground, the more you might feel on the outer hip, but just make sure the knee feels safe. Sitting up tall. Maybe you're able to take your left hand behind you, use it like a kickstand, and use your right hand to help you pull yourself into that twist more. Inhales help you sit up. Exhales help you twist or find comfort in the twist. You could take your right arm up and get it to the outside of the left knee and use the pressure there to help facilitate more of a twist, only if that feels okay in your shoulders and your neck. Same thing with taking the chin over that left shoulder, only doing that if it feels okay in the neck. And by okay, I really mean for me, it's like I don't feel much sensation in my neck at all. I might feel more sensation in my back, but definitely no pinching, pain, tingling sensation. Taking another inhale and exhale. Inhale and then exhale, unwind. Facing back forward, you can unwind all the way kind of to the right, just sort of facing the other direction. It doesn't have to be a big twist. And then unwind back to center. Send that right leg forward, left leg, and you can shake them out and move them as you want. Grabbing your blanket or towel or something like that, we're gonna roll this up. So I have a pretty big blanket. It's folded in half and then half again. And I'm gonna roll it up that way. If you have a towel, probably it'll be fine just to roll up as it is. Or maybe you fold it in half and then roll it up. But we're looking for like a blanket roll that's about 3 to 4 inches wide. Maybe a little wider is fine. A little bit more narrow might be not sensational enough in some parts. It's really gonna be whatever you have and how your body's feeling. We're putting this in 3 different places: the mid back, the hips, and the neck. We're coming into your final moments of class. So if there's something you like if you're like, oh, I just really like where this blanket is, I don't want to move it, you don't have to. You can stay there for Shavasana. You could remove it at some other point. You don't have to do all 3 places. I'm just showing you what they are. And you can explore all 3 places if you want. So the first one's in our mid back. You can bend your knees and we'll roll onto this blanket. We want it in our lower back rib cage. You don't want it down in your low back where the curve of the low back kind of happens. You don't want it up in your shoulder blades because they don't move. But it's sort of below your shoulder blades, above your low back, kind of where like a bra strap is or would be if you were wearing one, maybe slightly lower. And then your head can find the ground. If the head doesn't find the ground easily, you might want to unroll the blanket a little bit or put a blanket under the head. The arms can be out, or maybe they're in goalpost. You could extend the legs forward. At first, this place may not feel very comfortable, especially if you're a person like me. On the computer a lot, and probably, especially more recently, been a little bit more rounded forward with that. And I have a really tight mid back to begin with. When I first get into the shape, it can feel pretty uncomfortable. But that's just because my body is so used to being in the opposite direction and holding a lot of tension in this area that it freaks out a little bit. It's like, wait, this isn't what we normally do. So you could use your breath to sort of allow the nervous system to understand, like, okay, this is safe. If you can't find a neutral or natural breath and it feels like you're really forcing it to happen, then unwind the blanket. But if you can find that neutral breath with even the amount of discomfort that you have, so it doesn't feel like you're forcing your breath, you're just sort of breathing naturally. You can even find that Ujjayi breath if you wanted it, just because it helps you hear it better. And stay for a moment. We again don't want any pinching. We don't want anything tingling. We don't want any pain in the low back. So again, you may want to unravel the blanket some if you're feeling pain in the low back. Just take a few more breaths here before we move to the second spot. If you're happy here, it feels really good, you want to stay here, you can stay as long as you want. You can always meet us in the next shape, or you could stay here until you're ready to remove the blanket, whatever feels right to you. But to come out, you'd bend your knees, placing the feet on the floor if you had straighten the legs out. And then you just roll off to a side so that you could press yourself up and remove that blanket from under you. Rolling back onto your back, take a breath or two there now that that prop isn't there if you've removed it. And you can kind of feel your spine in this more neutral place on the ground. Might have a feeling of warmth, having that muscle memory of what you were just doing. The second place for the blanket, if you want it, is under the hips, but really more under the glutes, like under the butt. We don't want it up in the back. So you put your feet down, lift your hips up, and you can put that blanket under you. If you can't lift your hips up enough, sit up, sit on the blanket, and then lower yourself down. Sometimes it's a little bit scarier for people, so it's not normally the way I teach it. And it's definitely another way you can get in. And then you're getting that blanket really under the glutes, so not up in the low back. We want it to pull our tailbone forward a little bit so that when we extend our legs, the blanket's in the middle of the glutes, the tailbone's forward, and the spine is long. The back of the low back is long. And you might feel a ton of sensation in the front of the hips, especially if you, this is an ironic one, if you sit a lot, you might feel tightness here because your hip flexors become shortened and weakened. If you walk a lot, then your hip flexors become really strong and they might get tight because of that, or they might have that sensation of getting tight. So just doing this can help release those hip flexors a little bit, the psoas and the belly muscles a little bit, and lengthen through that low back. Again, your arms could rest on your body. They could be up, they could be out. They're just going to be in a place that feels comfortable to you. If you have a lot of neck and shoulder stuff, finding those goalpost arms, so the backs of the hands and forearms are on the ground with the elbows bent, that might feel really good to the neck and shoulders. So I know a lot of people, especially recently, feel like because they have either been sitting more or walking more, they prefer to stay right here for Shavasana. One of the students at the yoga studio is retired. She does virtual classes. She walks 2 hours a day now. Just because she doesn't have a lot of other things to do. So her hip flexors have been really tight. Her legs have been really tight just because that's a ton of walking. So if you're happy here, you can stay here for a little bit longer. I'm just going to show you what the third place is. You don't have to be with me, just so that we have enough time for you to stay in one of these places. You could bend the knees, placing the feet on the floor, lifting the hips up, removing the blanket roll, and letting the hips come back to the ground whenever you're ready. So again, you don't have to be with me. Again, just letting that spine sort of rest on the ground before you move on. And you could stay there for all of Shavasana if you wanted. The last placement is this blanket roll under the head, but I'm gonna unroll it some because I want the blanket roll to support the curve of my neck, and my neck's not that big. So from here, we can take that roll and place it under our neck. I like to get mine a little bit closer to my traps, the tops of my shoulders, just do a little massage there. And then the neck is supported by this blanket roll. You can keep your knees bent, or you can send the legs forward. If you had another blanket or pillow, you want to put it under your knees, that's fine too. That could help lengthen the low back again. The blanket roll for me, I keep it a little bit thick. This is maybe like 2 to 3 inches instead of 3 to 4. And then that kind of pushes into that occipital ridge, the space where my head and neck connect. It makes it feel like my curve is there, but at the same time, I'm getting length between my head and my shoulders. For me, that feels really good. For you, it may not. So you can choose if you like this or not. If you chose to do all 3 positions and you're like, I want to go back to one of them, then you can. If you chose to remove the blanket altogether and just rest on your back or in some other shape for Shavasana, Shavasana doesn't have to be on your back. It could be sitting up, it could be leaning back, it could be on your belly. You could do that. So taking a few moments at the end of the practice to allow the body to really rest. Allowing the breath to become involuntary, so letting go of any control over the breath that you may have had. And letting the mind just sort of be. So that it can get a rest. And it doesn't rest by turning off, it just rests by not letting yourself have so much control over it, and not letting whatever's happening in the mind have so much control over you. Just sort of allowing it to exist without judgment, without really engagement. Giving your body time to heal itself. Giving you time to be with yourself in stillness and quiet when everything else sort of falls away. We have come to the end of our hour. So if you have some sort of time constraint, you may want to start coming out of Shavasana. If you do not have a time constraint, I would encourage you to stay longer. And if that's you, you can just ignore me as I instruct everyone on how to get out of Shavasana. If you're ready to get out, you start bringing subtle movement back to the fingers and toes. You start deepening your breath. You can make those movements bigger. Maybe eventually bending the knees. Being careful, because if you do still have a prop under you, you just want to be mindful of it. And you'll make your way to whatever side feels like it's really calling you right now. You don't have to think too much about it. It's just kind of like, what side does it feel like my body wants to roll to? And then roll to that side. So you can take a moment on your side. This helps reawaken the body. You can even open your eyes gently. And then roll forward to help press yourself up so that the head and neck don't pull you up. It's really your body. Finding whatever comfortable seat feels good to you. Having my knees bent and crossed feels good to me, but people could sit with their feet out wide or on their heels, whatever feels good to them. You could reclose your eyes if that feels okay, or just stare down to the ground. You can take a few moments at the end of class to express gratitude towards yourself for creating time for your practice and for you. Send gratitude towards your classmates for sharing their energy and their time with you. We send gratitude towards the cultures and the teachers from which these practices come. And I thank each of you for sharing your practice with me. Dhanyavad. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Turn the recording off if you're in Shavasana, stay.